Good morning and welcome to, what is it, since 1995 we've been here anyway. This is the Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Exhibit Europe. Welcome to the Hanover Fair. Have a seat and have a drink. They're on the house, as we see here. It is really difficult to, address new technologies or new synergies in the market at the same time as we discuss what's actually happening in the world and how hydrogen and fuel cells plays into that energy model. I'm happy to have here two of the most informed people on this subject. People will recognize Ski Miburn because we tend to do the wrap-up every year. Our video is super popular, and we'll be doing a wrap-up again this year. So Ski Miburn is known to us as CEO of Vairex, but he's got some new information on that company and where it's moved strategically. And Dr. Jörg Schernikau, who is COO at Eberspächer. Now, people know that company because of its size, but we'll have to get down to the details here and start with the general introduction. Ski, for those who don't know who you are and what you do, tell us a bit about Vairex and the status ante quem.
Yes, so hello everyone and thanks for coming. I've been a long-time exhibitor at Hannovermesse Hydrogen Fuel Cell Exhibit. It's a real privilege and pleasure to be back. And I have to tell you, if I wasn't here, I'd be sitting on the front row in turn one of the Indianapolis 500. So, the biggest auto race in the world. So the fact that I gave that seat up to be here should tell you something about my motivation. Those of you that know me and those of you that don't, I've been in the fuel cell industry personally for more than 30 years, since before it was an industry. And the current incarnation of Vairex is about 10 years old, and less than a year ago, Eberspächer acquired my company. So I'm now half German. If you cut me, I bleed blue. And I'm even wearing my Eberspächer blue shoes today. Right? And we make air compressors. We make cathode air compressors with Eberspächer's backing and support. We're expanding our product portfolio. We're bringing the company up to much higher standards of quality and validation and all that stuff. And I'm on stage today with my new good friend, Jörg Schernikau, who's Chief Operating Officer.
Yeah, and with that we pass on the narrative to Eberspächer. Tell us about the company. I mean, this is a big player relative to the size of some of the companies in the fuel cell industry.
Yeah, Eberspächer is a pretty old company. It's more than 156 years old. Started as a glass sheet metal company. Now it's 95% automotive supplier with a net sales of 2.5 billion euro. And we are excited to be the first time here in Hanover on this fair. So we joined Varex spots here, and Eberspächer as automotive supplier known for exhaust systems and climate control systems and electronics is excited to enter with the acquisition of Varex into this hydrogen community.
So this raises the inevitable question. You're not a turncoat, Ski, right? You're committed to the fuel cell industry, but there you are engaging in a company that is famous for combustibles. On the clean side of the equation, of course, the catalytic converters and things like this. But there has been an acquirement and a combination company synergies here. So tell us about your decision-making process in this collaboration with your new partner.
So what happened to us was COVID was incredibly catastrophically good for Vairex. What happened was, with the huge push to online retail and the vast growth in big 24/7 warehouses run by people like Amazon and Walmart and Home Depot in the United States, one of our initial core businesses was selling cathode air compressors for fuel cells that went into forklifts. I know most of you don't wake up in the morning or in the evening thinking about forklifts, but they're actually a critical piece of the infrastructure of the distribution of products. And so because of the big push to online retail, our business selling cathode compressors to the forklift industry through our customer just exploded. And by late 2020, it was like, we either have to, if we're going to keep up, and of course we were determined to keep up, we either have to raise a gigantic amount of money and build all of this capacity ourselves, or we had to be acquired by a company that already had that capacity and was looking for new products, ways into the fuel cell industry. And it just so happened, partially due to a personal relationship with myself and an Eberspächer top executive named Massimo Venturi, that we got together with Eberspächer. And I actually think it was a match made in heaven. I won't say that a tiny company joining a big one or an American company joining a German one's not without its friction, but this was the right deal to do. This is the right business to be in. Right?
So what is your take on this acquisition?
Yeah, we are excited. As Guy said, there was a personal relationship which helped us to come together, and we are excited since the first day by the Varex company being in business already for many, many years, having 15,000 compressors in the field already. So we knew what the asset of Vairex is, with a customer base of over 100 active customers. For us, Eberspächer, being new in this industry, we have now the intelligence, the insight into this industry to build our strategy, because we consider Vairex being the first step into our journey into hydrogen as the next clean energy carrier for the automotive and the non-automotive industry.
So Eberspächer is, this is a strategic choice. That is, the combustibles, conventional hydrocarbon engines, they have a business model. When one thinks long term, though, one has to call into question how viable that will be. Climate change policies, maybe certain factors in our energy dependency in Germany play a factor there. But was there a moment at which the company thought the business model we have right now is great, but we have to think about where a future post-hydrocarbon energy lies and how to get involved in that? Was there some moment where that sort of recognition came?
Yeah, actually we have done this kind of transition, if you want, already in our past history. 10, 15 years ago, we started a small group working on products for the electromobility. Now this is a really sizable business already for us. So we hope we can build the same here now with hydrogen. Hydrogen in fuel cells, components for fuel cells, but also on the other hand, leveraging the know-how of our exhaust systems for usage in fuel cell exhaust systems, but as well for internal combustion engines operated by hydrogen. So we want to leverage the capabilities of Eberspächer's group by our sister division Puram by Eberspächer to see if we can generate business in that area as well.
This is when we were preparing for this talk, I heard this, hydrogen combustion engines. We have people on the fair here, Air Liquide and other guys who say you're going to combust hydrogen, and it's almost as if tears appear in their eyes. They would prefer the better application, the more efficient application. Ski, you have an interesting take. Why combust hydrogen? Why use it as a conventional fuel in a conventional car? And at what point is it better to go to a fuel cell and make a more effective use of the hydrogen?
Well, so let's think about that for a second. We already make millions and millions and millions of piston internal combustion engines every year. The capital cost per kilowatt of these devices is incredibly low. I mean, 1% of the cost of a fuel cell, or some incredibly small ratio. And you can run these engines on hydrogen. And when we do, not only do we get the carbon out of the atmosphere, which is one of the reasons I'm here, is to decarbonize the economy. So you do that, you get the carbon out, you create demand, and you look around, how many companies at the show this year are electrolyzer companies? Somebody's got to buy all that hydrogen. And so anything that creates demand for hydrogen, that reduces demand for fossil fuels, that pushes us forward is a good idea. And in the end, what I think happens is a diesel engine running on hydrogen is a relatively low capital cost, but relatively high operating cost device compared to a fuel cell. A very low operating cost device because of the high efficiency, but at the moment a high capital cost. And now if you're an individual operator of trucks, you're going to look at this and they say, I get two choices. I can choose low capital costs with high operating costs, or low operating costs with high capital costs. And over time, of course, those relationships will change in the direction of fuel cells. But when you're trying to change the industry of the world, you need to be able to drive a wedge, start small, and have a continuous path to growth. I mean, I'm a manufacturing guy at heart. I've been making stuff for my whole career. Eberspächer has been making stuff since before the car industry began. This is what we do. We make stuff. And so we're looking for opportunities to make stuff, right?
For me, that's a fascinating question. Germany has a different sense of looking at combustibles and hydrocarbons. Namely, in the United States, they have the fracking industry. They're a net exporter now of hydrocarbons. Germany, we all know, is in a very precarious situation, the industry, the energy sector, simply because of its dependency. And one of the ways out of that is largely to access the potential of renewables, which is almost impossible without hydrogen as a storage and carrier facility. To what extent was this engagement with Vairex based on a very German way of looking at the numbers and saying this has got to change, or were there other factors involved?
Yeah. I mean, our Eberspächer strategy is built on clean solutions for mobility. So that's one pillar, and we know that the normal standard internal combustion engine business will shrink. It will shrink in the regions with different speed. For example, Europe might be the first one where half of the vehicles will be electrical powered. But so from that perspective, as a family-owned company, we think in decades. So we want to build a business that by 2030 is substantial. So from that perspective, yes, we have a strategic aspect in it. But Eberspächer, with 80 locations in many countries, 28 countries, we think global. Yeah, of course, we are based in Germany. We're a German engineering company, but our acting is based on the global thing. But I think what you just said for Germany is true for many countries in the world as well. So we need to drive our mobility into a clean mobility, sustainable mobility. But this market will develop only in the next 10 years. So that's why we, with Varex and other components, will focus also on what we call non-automotive applications of fuel cells, for example.
And this is already where we get to the crystal ball facet of this whole discussion here, looking at where the growth potential is going to occur. And where it has occurred, you mentioned that we've had this hiatus. We haven't talked for 2 years, largely. What were the growth prospects? Where were the growth prospects in those 2 years? And what do you see on the slate for the next, let's say, 5 years? Everyone knows that hopefully 10 or 15 years down the road, there'll be mandates that will force renewable energy. But what's happening right now, Ski, how do you look at that?
Well, one of the reasons that we got into the fuel cell forklift business, which, by the way, is, with one small exception that proves the world in Japan, is the largest unit volume industry, fuel cell industry in the world today, is because in America, our political support for renewables and fuel cells and everything kind of is bipolar. It's good when we're blue and it's bad when we're red, and it's blue and I'm not sure which is worse, when it goes up or when it goes down, but both times are challenging. And so in my personal career, I learned early I had to be international. I had to step outside the United States to buffer some of the economic swings that our politics imposes on us in the United States. But I also was looking for opportunities that weren't so dependent on government subsidy or government. And one of the cool things about fuel cell forklifts is that they grew up first at volume in the United States where there were no subsidies. And so it was something that the fuel cell industry had to find an application that was so economically viable today at the high capital cost of fuel cells, at the high operating cost of hydrogen, which costs $6 or $8 a kilogram, that still made economic sense. And there's a certain niche in the logistics business and indoor giant indoor facilities that run hundreds of forklifts, where that was true today. And what you're always looking for in a disruptive industry is that wedge I was talking about. Some way you can just slip, maybe it's only the thickness of a sheet of paper under the door and start. And for us it was forklifts. Now it's moving on to ground support equipment, to stationary power in certain markets. As the volumes go up and the cost comes down, then every time you get a drop in the capital cost, the market grows or an adjacent market becomes available. So we're just building out from there.
And with all the developments, of course, Eberspächer brings to the table certain engineering skills and expertise. And this sort of information transfer is for me fascinating. Some people are sitting on specific technical abilities that are vital to the fuel cell industry. What do you bring to the table from your company that has spill-off effects and synergies within the fuel cell community?
Yeah. Well, as an automotive supplier, you need to produce quite complicated products in pretty high volume. And that brings capabilities in industrial engineering, in machinery, in assembly processes, in quality processes. And that's what we already have started to bring to Vairex. Of course, in a certain limits, not to break them as a small organization. But of course, these capabilities we bring in our network of production locations. So if, for example, Vairex would need to produce in Europe or in China, that it's not a big deal anymore because we have facilities that we can use there. We can also use many of our development tools, like simulation in acoustics and so forth, specifically for air compressors, a special topic. We have those capabilities, and step by step, we bring those to the table to the benefit of our customers.
Oh, and I want to say this is completely consistent with the Varex strategy. For a long time, we always said our headquarters are in Colorado in the United States. We've got a nice, beautiful new facility, partially due to our relationship with Eberspächer. But we always planned to localize. We always thought that once the business got big enough that we would localize production close to our customers. Well, Eberspächer, you take all the facilities in the world, Eberspächer has square kilometers of roof, right? The Varex factory that we just moved out of wasn't much bigger than this public forum. Now it's much bigger, with the opportunity to leapfrog. We could leapfrog to Korea, we could leapfrog to China, we could leapfrog to Europe, almost in the blink of an eye. And that gives us capability that we present to customers that we could never imagine before. I mean, it's really powerful, right?
We're going to run out of time here, and that is a shame because there's so much more to talk about. Particularly of interest for me are the development prospects that we mentioned during the warm-up, and moving away from combustion engines with the technology that is in combustion engines. It's counterintuitive, but it's a standard, isn't it? The way this technology grows is through synergies and being aware of what changes are ahead of us through this challenge of moving towards a hydrogen economy. I thank you both. We'll be seeing Ski towards the end of the week for a roundup here. Yeah, welcome to the club, Jörg. It's been a pleasure to have you. I've been talking to Dr. Jörg Schernikau, who is COO at Eberspächer, and Ski Milburn, CEO of Vairex, and now their team. It's been wonderful. Visit their booth, which is D71. In that direction, I believe.
Yeah. Correct.
And yeah.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Jörg.
Cheers.